Today we are going to discuss Cambridge IGCSE Business Studies, code 0450, and the section we are going to discuss is classification of businesses. So how do you classify business? In IGCSE, we are going to discuss the stages of economic activity. Think of perhaps a Toyota car, which you go and buy, say, from a dealer or a showroom. The stages it goes by the time you can buy the car itself includes stage 1, where the iron ore is extracted, mined, then a steel mill works on it, converts into steel. The Toyota car then works, adds, and manufactures the automobile itself. And the showroom, the final stage where customers can go and buy this vehicle. So there are 3 stages that we need to understand. Primary, which is related to most of the things that come from earth, which includes farming, natural resources, forest. Second stage is secondary or manufacturing, where someone works on these raw materials, resources, and converts them into some manufactured product or processed good. And then there is tertiary. Example of tertiary includes retail, shops, online teaching. Right, as seen in this video, an online tutor is teaching, providing a service. All services come under the category of tertiary services. So let's do a bit of exercise, a bit of a quiz, and I'm going to bring out these famous companies in front of you, and perhaps you could try and see which one you can identify as related to primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. So the biggest insurance company in the world is China Life Insurance. Right, it is from tertiary sector. The biggest forest is the Amazon. If you are cutting trees in Amazon forest, you're involved in primary sector. The biggest mine, gold mine, is Grossberg Gold Mine. If you are extracting gold here, you are involved in, or you're right, you're involved in primary sector. The biggest computer company, Dell Computers. Right again, it is related to secondary sector. The biggest travel agency in UK, Thomas Cook. Perfect, it is related to tertiary sector. In Cambridge, one of the most famous bakeries is the Cambridge Oven. And that's a bit tricky. In some ways, the portion part of the bakery which manufactures the cake, some would say that comes in the secondary sector. But the retail, the shop where they sell it, would be in the tertiary sector. Similarly, Rolls-Royce showroom. If you go there, you're entering a tertiary sector. Excellent. Now let's move forward and try to understand the importance of these 3 stages of production vis-a-vis the economies of the countries. You must have heard the terms developed countries, and there are countries which are known as developing countries, which are still developing. And one of the key difference between the two is that in developing countries, majority of population is still involved in the primary sector. And the more developed you are in the economy, the more and more of your population is involved in the tertiary sectors. And that is the kind of transition you see in country after country. 2 things are important here. when you are looking at the economy of the country, any country, one point you always see is the percentage of country's total number of workers who might be involved in each of these sectors. And two, you would identify the value of outputs of goods and services and proportion of which is of the total national output. So these two factors give you an indication about the economic stage of each country. For example, UK has transformed from a secondary manufacturing focused country, which was maybe in 1960s and 70s, and the economy has become more and more focused on the tertiary sector, so much so that nearly 75% of all workers are involved in tertiary sector. In other countries in Asia, like China and India, they have transitioned from the primary sector and primary stage to the secondary stage. Another topic that is important to discuss here is the concept of mixed economy. By mixed economy, we mean that how much of the economic activities are run by private sector and how much by the public sector. And most of the countries of the world have both private sector and the public sector working side by side. And that is why they are called mixed economies. Private sector is a business not owned by the government. It's owned by private individuals who are primarily focused on making profit, and for that they keep their own prices, make the products they think market requires. Compare this to a public sector where government or state control businesses. The state decides what products to be produced, how much to be produced, and how to be priced. Most of the economies of the world have moved to a direction where the percentage of private sector is on the rise. Saying that, there are certain areas where public sector still dominates, like health, like education, like defense, police, public transport. See on the screen a very simple example that why this is important. You see the 7 or 8 dots on the screen? Think they represent stations in different towns. And the blue lines you see represent routes which are profitable. And the red lines depict routes which are loss making. Now just think intuitively, if you were a private sector investor and you were asked to run trains, on which routes would you run your trains? Of course, you are right, on the blue line. But that does mean that towns which are on the red line will not be catered. Citizens living there will not get the railway service from the private sector. So what happens? The government intervenes. The government has to come and run rails even on tracks and routes which are non-profitable, because that is the number one priority and objective of a government, to deliver services to all its citizens, irrespective whether it's a profit-making route or not. So mixed economies have gone through changes in the recent past. As I explained, most of the governments are now withdrawing their intervention and leaving the running of business to businesses, and for this they have been selling off the public sector enterprises, and this process is known as privatization. Alright, so what we have discussed till now is the 3 stages of production. We have discussed why private sector and public sector both operate in economies together, the difference between developing and developed economies,